Okay, so we're continuing on with processing of NCI data. And let's make sure. Okay, and we are recording. Okay, great. So processing of NCI data. Before we do this with the post that I'm using, there are a couple of things that you guys should be aware of when it comes to working with mill post processors. I'm going to open up Windows Explorer, File Explorer, and we'll navigate to the shared documents. So this is going to be C users, public documents. And this is going to be the default storage location for all of your shared Mastercam files. So you'll notice I've got shared X5, X6, X7, X8, X9, MCAM 2017, and shared MCAM 2018. If I open up shared MCAM 2017, there are subfolders based on the product. So lathe, mill, mill turn, router, wire. We're going to go to mill, and then we're going to open up posts. So these are kind of the default post processors that ship with Mastercam. And there's only a few of them. So you'll notice we've got this Dynapath mill, a couple of Fadals, Format 1 and Format 2. We have generic Fanuc, 3, 4, and 5 axis. The 5 axis post, by the way, has 2 separate files that you must have together, the PST and the PSB file. We've got a couple of generic Haas 3 and 4 axis mills, and then the VFTR series 5 axis mill. And I've got a Herco that I have been messing with here. So this isn't one of the ones that ships with Mastercam. This is something else I was working on. Now, Mastercam actually has and maintains a pretty big library of default posts. They are available by asking your reseller, or at least I should say this, they should be available through your reseller. Some resellers are more willing to share than others. Is that diplomatic enough? So if I go look, I happen to have, for example, sort by name. A variety of post-installation programs. So for each version of Mastercam, and you notice my versions stop at X7, so this is as far as I've got from the downloads. Mostly because ever since X7, I've just been updating the ones that I've got. But this program is available from your reseller, hopefully, and it will install a bunch of optional post processors. So if I double click on X7 post installation, this gives you an example of running the process. It does warn you, selected posts, machine and control definitions will be overwritten. Please back up any changed files. Do you want to continue? Yes. And it goes through, standard license agreement, shows you the folder that it's going to be writing to. Hold on one sec, guys. My cat's meowing. So in this case, for the X7 post installation, if I choose to install any of these posts from or to this folder, it's going to overwrite any of the existing ones. So if you've done any work to those, you always want to make sure to make a backup before running this process. So I select OK, and this now gives me a list of all of the optional mill, lathe, router, and wire posts. Now, if you don't have a router, wire, or lathe license, then it makes no sense to install those. But you certainly can install them all if you choose to. If I expand mill posts, for example, you'll notice we've got Kirasiki, Bridgeport Easy Track, Cincinnati Achromatic 2100, Cincinnati Millicron Vickers. So again, it's kind of at the reseller's discretion on whether or not they want to give out this program. I'll tell you what, I'll put my X7 version up on the Dropbox and give everybody a link to it. If you want it, take it. And you would need to then open it up. I think for X7 you're going to have to open it up in something like X9 and then do the update. And then Kenan has a comment. I think Mastercam.com has these posts available for Mastercam 2018. Yes. So a lot of this stuff is now available on the website. And that was coming full circle back to the 2017 help file and documentation. All of the new documentation stuff is going to be up on Mastercam.com. So you actually have to go register at their new website forum. You have to link your HASP and do a couple of things. So, but once you do that, you now get easy access to download some of these new things like the documentation and the posts, these post processors, for example. So here you can see the Fidals, some Heidenhain posts, Mazak, there's a generic Prototrack, a Herco, a Makino S56, a Mazak Nexus. One of the ones I particularly like is actually down at the end, the Akuma OSP P200M 4-axis mill post. I actually put quite a bit of time into developing that post when I worked at CNC Software. So it's got like the call 0088 function for dynamically tracking the fixture offsets. It's got a bunch of stuff in there. So if you happen to have an Akuma machine and Akuma mill, this is a great one. I'll just go ahead and say OK, and I'll install the posts. So that, for example, just overwrote for X7 a whole bunch of post processors. We mostly cover the generic post processors from CNC Software in this class because they all kind of have a similar structure to them in the way that they're laid out and the way that we are going to make edits to those posts. For example, I'm going to do this real quick. We're still in the middle of posting that. I got to finish that. Let's do that. Okay. You know what? I may be able to update. Let's see if we can. Yeah, I think we can migrate them. So we're going to do the migration wizard here. If it will let me. Sometimes this migration wizard takes a little bit to get going. Make sure we save it. There we go. I hit enter and all of a sudden the buttons come up. So sometimes Mastercam will do funky stuff like that. All right, let's see. So we're going to migrate these shared files. From shared MCAM X7. Include the subfolders. And we're going to bring them into 2017. Under file types, we'll bring everything. And under versions, yeah, for 2017, the farthest we can go back is X7, so that's perfect. I'll bring in all the X7. And we'll do finish. Okay, so we're going to do the update of these files, and then we're going to start talking about the basics of a post. Variables, strings, post blocks, kind of the very basic building blocks that make up the PST file, the script file. And as part of that, one of the things that I like to do is to start out at the beginning of class and take a post processor and strip it down to its most basic. So we take the post processor and we remove almost everything as far as output processing. Why? Well, because I really want to show you that the PST file is just an instruction set. So it is just a list. It's just a list of commands to tell it, output this data whenever you see it. So we'll look at that as part of our basic post introduction. All right. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and cancel that since it's updating darn near everything. And we don't need everything. Three post basics. Okay. Sorry, guys. All right. Let's get back to doing this here. Okay. Alright, so we've got this generic Fanuc 4x mil post, and that's what's outputting the data for these three operations. So if I hit post process, which is the G1 button, overwrite and edit with generic Fanuc 4x mil post, select OK. This is the code that we get out from our post processor. This code here is based entirely on the NCI data that we processed and the instruction set that's inside our post processor. So the list of commands that tells it when you see this code in the NCI, output this. So what does that look like? The Simco editor is a really nice editor for working with NC code. So adding and removing spaces, block numbers, searching for tool changes, that kind of things. It's a really lousy editor for working with Mastercam post processors. And that's not totally true. It's not lousy. It's just that it's not a feature-rich editor. So I'm in Mastercam 2017. I'm going to go to File, Open in Editor. And in the File Open dialog, I'm going to choose the editor that I want to use. And so I get the little drop down that comes up here, and I'm going to pick Mastercam. So the Code Expert editor is the Mastercam editor. And Code Expert has IntelliSense or code auto completion that's built into it. I'm going to go look for the generic Fanuc 4x mil post and select it. At the top of every post processor is a bunch of comments that are meant to be read by you when you open it in a text editor. The comment character for the post processor is the pound or hashtag sign. So when you put a pound sign on a line, everything to the right of that pound sign is ignored. Now, there are some exceptions. For example, you can use a pound sign as part of a string now. There are some other complications if you need it as a special character. But in general, the pound sign represents the comment character. So the PST file is going to ignore everything to the right. If I start paging down in this post processor, there's a ton of comments up at the top. So I always recommend that you read the comments that are at the start of your, top of your post processor. It's just a good idea. And then we get down to some variable definitions. There are a bunch of different sections of code that exist in this post processor. Let me sure everything's expanded. So there's a function called regions, and I'll show you guys how to use that here in a minute. But let me just open this up. And so as I scroll down here, you can really see there's just a ton of different stuff. There's almost 3,000 lines of code. But what do we really need? Well, that depends on what we want to output. So I'm going to save this as a backup. Always a good idea to save a copy of your post. In fact, sometimes I'll save multiple copies of the post. And one way to do that, if I go to the File menu and do a Save As, for post files, we used to be kind of limited. So the Mastercam system would only recognize .pst or .psm or .set. And somewhere along the line, they gave us a new post processor extension that was kind of exclusive to Mastercam. The idea behind it being you can actually email these without it being caught in the Outlook spam filter. So instead of just PST, the other extension we can use is MC Post. I like saving as MC Post because it will still be recognized by the text editor with the code completion, but it's also just a good way to make yourself a backup. So I'll save it as a .mc post, and I'll do another save as, and where are we at here? Generic Fanuc 4xmil.pst. So now I'm basically saving it back as a PST file. And here you can see it's saved as .pst. So we're processing with this file, generic Fanuc 4xmil post. I've made a backup of it. I'll show you all what I'm doing in just a second here. So we don't even really need the post text, but I'm just keeping the post text at the end there so I don't have to retype it out later. So what did I do? I just took everything that was in the post, except for the post version line, which is up at the top, because we need that, and the post text down at the bottom. Do we even really need this? Probably not. You know what? Just to show you. And I just got rid of it. So I've got a post processor now. Which is 4 lines of code. So I'll take and post-process these operations here. Generic Fanuc 4x mil post. Overwrite and edit. Save that. I'm going to make sure I'm using the correct post processor. Try it one more time real quick. I may just be not pointed at the right one. No, I'm definitely not pointed at the right one. So, how do I tell which post I'm using here versus which post I'm editing? First of all, if I hover my cursor on top of generic Fanuc 4x mil post, you can actually see there's the string that pops up that shows me the file path to this post processor, and this is the X9 version, so I'm in the wrong one. So what I'll do, I'm going to save as shared MCAM 2017 mil posts and generic Fanuc 4x mil post. I'm going to save it. Now, this version line tells MP what version of post you're working with. So this V18, this is actually X9. So if we make it 19, that is for 2017. And this will work too for moving your posts from a higher level of Mastercam down to a lower level of Mastercam. Now, you need to be a little bit careful when you do that. When you take a post that's working in a later version of Mastercam and you bring it down to a lower version, there can be parameters that are in the newer version that aren't in the older version, or there can be parameter numbers where the data has changed, so the actual parameter number has changed. And the only way to know that, you're going to get an error when you run it, and you're going to need to get the NCI and parameter reference for your specific version of Mastercam to be able to make sure those parameter numbers are correct. So I'll save this. It's now in 2017, and it's now got the proper version number. So we'll post that. Okay. I had all of this NCI data. Let me post that, and let's say NCI overwrite edit, and no NC. I just want the NCI. Here's all of my toolpath data. Okay, all of this 270 lines of data, and the only instruction in my post processor is to print out the string hello world and end the line. That's it. There's only one post block. So the only difference between what I got before and here is the instruction set that I gave the MPDLL post engine. Okay? We're going to explore that a little bit. We're going to look at that some more and look at where does the data come from and what are we working with inside MP. What is the MP language? We are going to take just a quick break. I'm going to split the video. You know what, let's do like 5 minutes. We went a little long on this video, so we're going to do a quick 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back and wrap it up with the last half hour of class.